book of Revelation today, and I gave each of you a chart, and those of you who are on the television that would like to have a copy of this chart, you just drop a line and we'll send it to you. It lines up the 7 cities, the 7 churches in Revelation, lines them up with the ancient cities of the most Hindu cities, the body parts, the sign, the symbols, the planets, and so forth. And it's interesting to have when you're following along in the book of Revelation. What makes this, or what should make the book of Revelation an interesting study to you, is the fact that Revelation is speaking of you, your body. Okay, the whole book of Revelation is about your body. And that's why, to me, it's so extremely fascinating. It's written in great symbols, mystical symbols. It has its roots in the Kabbalah and ancient mysticism, ancient Egyptology. But when you have a secret-coded word that comes from the universe to you, it's worthwhile for you to stop and take a look at it. So let's do that, okay, right now. We're at Revelation 1, and we're going to verse 13. Let's see. No, we're at verse 11 is where we left off last time. And in your little Bibles, it's on page 1002, okay? So let's take a look at it. We just take our time as we go through the book of Revelation, because it can be quite complex, but it's worthwhile for you to see, because it's written in such a way that you begin to say, gee, how did such ancient people know and locating the parts of the body, and in your times of illness, etc. It's really good to see this. Revelation 1:11, we've covered I am the Alpha and Omega, the first and last. We covered that before. What you see right in the book. Now that's the first thing that we have to look at. The word book. Now, of course, the first thing that you're going to imagine is there's instructions for this John to take notes. It's not. It's not what's being said here. Keep your finger there. Go a few pages to the book of Revelation. Okay? Oh, book of Revelation. The book of Revelation, Revelation 5, okay? And I saw in the right hand of him that sat on the throne a book written within, on the backside sealed with 7 seals. That book that's being referred to here in Revelation 1:11 is yourself. Written within, on the backside sealed with 7 seals is obviously that which is the effect of Kundalini. So the book is your inner being. You, inside, is the book. And that's where John, so to speak, is being told, write this in the book. Place this inside of yourself. And where is he to send it? Unto the 7 churches. Unto the 7 churches. In other words, what's being said here is that the directions are that you are supposed to send this wisdom, send this understanding to those 7 chakras. Send a spiritual awakening to the 7 nerve centers in order to bring about a spiritualization. So the 7 centers are the 7 chakras that run up your spine. And what he's being told here, okay, write this, take this inside of yourself, and send this, which is the information of the wisdom, to the 7 centers to start spiritualizing those 7 centers. If you wish to come closer to what you call God, then you've got to send this message to the 7 nerve centers. Now you have that chart that I gave you. And here then, the 7 churches which are in Asia unto Ephesus. Okay, if you look at Ephesus, you'll see that's the area of the sacrum. There's an interesting thing about the sacrum. You see, when Lucifer became Satan, it was because of the fall of the 5 senses. Okay? When the 5 senses were taken over by the lower flesh, sight, taste, touch, smell, and hearing, then Lucifer became Satan. Jesus comes along and takes the 5 wounds and restores the oneness back to God. So here the 5 senses are taken away from God. Here they're returned to God, and the oneness with God becomes that which was holy. The 5 become one. Now it's acted out in your body. When you're born, you have 33 vertebrae in your spine. Between the age of 1 and 6, the 5 lowest vertebrae fuse into one. And what is it called? Sacrum. It means sacred place, holy place. How come? See, that should be enough for you to understand that there's something high and beyond and above and beautiful about the creation and what's going on. Why is that place in your spine, that is the foundation upon which you sit and stand, called sacrum or holy place? Because the same activity that happened, the loss of the 5 senses, in the recovery of the 5 senses, those 5 into 1 is acted out in the base of your spine in what is now called the sacrum or the holy place. I remember telling that to a veterinarian one time, Dr. Reynolds, and he ran and got a book and looked it up. He said, "For God's sakes," he says, "this is true." I said, "I know." Why else would they call that area the holy place? Why would it be called a sacred place? It's not really the most attractive part of people. Nonetheless, well, in some people it might be, right? All right, onward we go. But you know what I'm saying? Why is it referred to as a sacred holy place? Because it is the fusing of the 5 to 1. That's what Jesus, the 5 wounds brought him into a oneness. When you sacrifice the 5 senses, you come into a oneness. When the 5 bones are fused into one, it becomes sacred, and it's the sacrum. And that's why it's called the sacrum. Okay? So you have the sacrum. Then you go to Smyrna, which is the sexual or prostate area. You go to Pergamos, which is the solar plexus. Thyatira, which is the heart. Sardis, which is the throat. Philadelphia, which is the head. Take a look at your chart. There's something very interesting there. If you look at Philadelphia, you'll see something under the ancient city. You know, whenever you get somebody that gives you a headache and makes you nuts, what do you say? Oh, you give me Agna already. Well, look at the ancient city, the ancient name of the city, Agna. That's where it comes from. That's why you say, oh, you give me Agna. That's exactly what it is. But do you know that's put in there 7,000, 8,000 years ago, and you're still saying it today? And nobody ever thinks to say, why do you say you give me Agna? Well, that's why you say you give me Agna, because it's the location of the head, and you're saying you're driving me nuts. You give me Agna. And then, of course, Laodicea, which is the pineal gland, and so forth. So that's the 7 cities, and they line up with the 7 chakras of the brain. So you saw 2 things right there already that have to do with your body, sacrum and ajna. The lower part and the head part, okay? So when we're in here, it says, right, and what you see under the 7 churches, it names the 7 churches, okay? And then it goes on here, we go on back to page 1003 to Revelation 1:12. And I turned to see the voice that spoke with me, and being turned, I saw 7 golden candlesticks, okay? Now here's a good point. John turned to see the voice that spoke. In other words, what you're doing now, you are receiving this impulse that your healing, your life, should be centered around the 7 nerve centers, the chakras of the spine, within yourself. And so you are now turning away from religion, you're turning away from outside directions, you're turning away from friends and families and traditions, and you're turning in to see the one that spoke. You're turning inward so that you see with the single eye, you don't see with the physical eyes. You hear with the single ear, so to speak, you don't hear with the physical ear. Take a look at page 985 in those little Bibles, and if you look at the book of Hebrews and go to Hebrews chapter 12, this is spelled out by the Apostle Paul. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 25. Okay? Hebrews chapter 12, verse 25, and it says, see that you refuse not him that speaks. For if they escape not who refused him that spoke on earth, much more shall not we escape if we turn away from him that speaks from heaven. And where is heaven? Heaven is the kingdom within you. Heaven is that higher realm of consciousness. And what it's saying is, see that you don't refuse to listen to that impulse that comes from the higher mind. That's what John's experiencing. So place yourself in John's position now, because that's what this book is about. It has nothing to do with a guy named John, because there was nobody named John. It has nothing to do with somebody that's going through this kind of an exotic trance state. It has to do with you. And you're being admonished that there is an impulse within you from the higher mind that directs you to pay attention to that which is your inner being and the 7 nerve centers that run up the spine, which are called the 7 chakras. All right, and that's what this is about. 7 spiritual centers in the back. Okay, I wanted to also for you to understand something. That when you talk about the churches in Asia, Asia is not talking about the continent, the Chinese, Japanese. There was a province in Rome at the time called Asia, and the 7 churches were supposed to be there, and that's how they brought that together. But the church, the temple actually was built with the front of it facing the sun. So in your human body, when you see the directions of the east, it's always the front of you. The west is always the back side. So then you're the temple. I've told this a few times, and once again, I think you're mature enough to handle this, so I'll tell you this now. The construction of the early churches, continued to this day, are made in the form of the human male body. Okay? Churches are made with the altar being the head. The center of the church, which is the abdomen part of the body where the people sit and congregate, is, if you look up in any church construction, you see that's called the nave, N-A-V-E. Each of you have a little nave in the center of your church, too. And this is the part that may get you. Nonetheless, it is a fact, and I promise you with my hands up, do you know what the steeple is? You got it. It's exactly what it was. The worship of the phallic, which is the male sexual organ in an erect position because then it was prepared to conceive and give life, and the steeple is the male organ. The center is the nave, or the center of the abdomen, and the altar is the head. So go down to church and tell the local pastor, here's the church, here's the steeple. I want to see all the people. Nonetheless, that's the way it is, folks. So the next time, I'll bet you'll never look at a church like that and see the same thing again. Woo! You say, is that something? All right. But there's nothing wrong with knowing the truth, and that's exactly why it's built that way. There's no other reason but that. And it was phallic worship, and phallic worship was an extremely popular thing of the cults from many thousands of years ago. And it was a beautiful thing because here is the creation of life. As I told you about the god of Memphis, who would masturbate and allow the seed to spill out and then create life because he had nobody else. They couldn't figure out, well, how else can he do this? How's he going to make people? So he had to masturbate. The seed fell on the earth. All life came. And the first one that was born out of that masturbation of that seed was a man named Atom. That's interesting too, and that's the history of the religion out of Memphis in Egypt. And of course, this is very consistent with what we know. All you got to do is put the top there, and the origin of all things is the atom. And when God took a rib out of Adam to make Eve, you simply take an electron out of an atom to multiply the energy. So the Bible's telling you that all life started when God split the atom. And that should not be difficult. In fact, it should make you jump up and down in ecstasy to say, my goodness gracious, this proves that the Bible was written by the universal creator. And it's no question about it that it was. Okay? So John turns to, we got some pretty heavy stuff in the first 10 minutes, didn't we? Okay. And you were all here. Most of you are still here. As Al said, it wasn't too long ago, I say stuff like this, and boy, they're heading for the door. But only because people do not want to. Maybe you don't like the fact that the steeple on a church represents the male organ in an erection state. Maybe that you can't deal with that. But that's not going to change the fact that that's the truth. That's where it came from. And so at least you know. If you can't handle the truth, then you go on and perpetuate and follow fantasy. But that's not going to get you anywhere. When you're big enough and strong enough and mature enough to follow the truth, you'll work your way out of this thing, and you'll become totally involved in one with the universe and one with God. So let's, as I said, so I'm not telling you anything you haven't heard a million times before. I mean, and people go into shock. Oh my God, oh, I never knew there was such a thing. Well, you should know there is such a thing. Anyhow. In Revelation 1:12, so here John sees 7 golden candlesticks. There's those 7 churches that you have on your chart. The 7 spiritual centers of the life force of God, which are the 7 chakras which are raised along the spine. Those are the 7 golden candlesticks, okay? And they're filled with the life of God. And so these churches or these areas become sacred places. The 7 centers of the nerve centers are actually each one of them, the 7, are part of your life. They're the productions of disease, they're the productions of your difficulties in the various areas that they represent, whether they be the sexual areas or the heart area, the throat area, the mind area. But when they are open, when the 7 seals are open, they then become divine. See, closed, they're yours in their flesh. Open, they become divine. And that's why it's very, 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 very important that in our meditation we allow this to happen. We don't force it to happen. We allow it to happen because it happens ourselves. And see, it's our task then to spiritualize these churches and light the candles. The candlesticks being gold signify that this is God-related because gold in the Bible is the color of God, the color of the universe. Revelation 1:13, page 1003 in those little Bibles. In the midst of the 7 candlesticks, okay, now what are the 7 candlesticks? 7 candlesticks are the 7 chakras that run up your spine. Now, forget about all the hullabaloo about all this mystical language. Go to where we're at. We're right in the middle of your body, okay? In the midst, it's talking about your body. In the midst of the 7 centers is one like the Son of Man, okay? One like the Son of Man, or Son of Man, it's all a play on words. What is that? What's being referred to? In the center of your being is the solar plexus. Exactly right. That's what's being talked about. The solar plexus. That's where the energy springs forth. The Son of Man. In the center of your, in the midst of the 7 centers, right in the middle of it, is the solar plexus. So we're seeing the spirit of the higher God beginning to function with the center of our desire being. In other words, you've heard the impulse. You're turning within yourself to listen to Him who speaks. You're paying attention to the 7 centers. You realize that the 7 centers of the 7 churches have to be energized spiritually, the chakras up the spine. Now you get involved in this business with the 7 candlesticks, so your desire being is starting to turn upward. That's what's being talked about. It's not talking about John. It's not talking about some magic voice coming to John. This was written for people to break through the code of the ancients, the mystical code, and begin to realize that this is an instruction for each one of you, that you'll hear this voice, it will direct you within, it will direct you to pay attention to the 7 chakras, and your desire then will start to raise itself to light those 7 candles. Okay? So that in the midst there we have the solar plexus. Now, and in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, one like unto the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the foot. What does that mean? It's hidden. Totally hidden. Completely hidden. The energy, the power, the identity is completely hidden. There's nothing that's exposed. Basically, if the doctor operates on your spine, he's not gonna find the 7 chakras. Just like if the doctor operates on your brain, he's not going to find a thought. Not going to find an idea, not going to find a fear, not going to find a love, but all of those things are there. Okay. So here then, this is a completely hidden. And wherever you have reference to a garment, you remember that when the lady touched the hem of Jesus' garment, she was healed. It's that which is the covering over the holy place. That which is the closest thing to the holy place. Now, here within us, yet in our soil state, the Christ is beginning to move. It's still hidden from us. Say, we know it's there, and there's many of you. You feel the movement of it, but you can't find it. You feel the movement of it, but you can't seem to see it. But you know something is there. It's covered. Now look what it says here. And gird about the paps with a golden girdle. That once again you have that word golden to signify that this is a divine thing. The paps are the breasts. And why would they be girded about? Because the breast signifies the place of milk, from which milk flows, or that which is the place of wisdom. And here, your wisdom, your understanding, your intellectualism is being held in check by the restraint of God's power, so that your impulses can be guided and controlled by Him. Your impulses to allow the wisdom to spill out of you, which is from your mind, is put under check and under restraint by the Spirit within you, so that it is not your wisdom that spills out, but His. So that means that the breasts are then constrained. That's a symbol meaning from that from which the milk flows is restrained, which is another symbol meaning that which is the place of where wisdom flows is restrained. So it's no longer your wisdom that counts. It is now that which is the divine wisdom that will come from God. Okay. In Revelation 1:14, his head and his hairs white like wool. That's a symbol of one that's called in the most ancient times the Ancient of Days. Okay? The Ancient of Days. In other words, its lineage goes back beyond all time, beyond all things. It's not part of any religion. It's not part of any nationality. The one thing I can't stand is when somebody comes up to me and says, "Ah, Bill Donahue, what nationality is that?" I said, "It is not. There's none." I don't, you don't want to be labeled with anything. You come out of your mother's womb and everybody loves you. You're a little baby. Then somebody stamps you. Oh, you're Italian. You got millions of people now that don't like you. Doesn't make any difference. You haven't said anything. You haven't done anything. You don't know anything, but they stamped you. You're an Italian. Yeah, you know what they're like. Yeah, I know. Huh? Or you got a little Jew punch. Jew. Nobody likes you. Black, yellow, red, white. You haven't done anything to anybody, but instantly there's millions of people that don't like you because you have a label on you. Now this transcends that. It has nothing to do with Christianity. See, well, when we're Christians, we're saved. Somebody's got a label on you. We're Jews. We're God's chosen people. Somebody's got a label. We're Muslims. We're God. The rest of them are devils. Somebody's got a label on you. Rip the label off. If anybody says to me, "What's your nationality?" I say, "I don't have any." I don't have any. What do I know about that? That's something people made up. I'm born. I'm a human being in the universe. That's it. I'm a universe. That's it. You want to call that the nationality? I'm the nationality. I'm the universe. I'm with the whales and the dolphins and the mice. That's me. I don't have anything to do with with the mice. Did you hear that story? Yep. Have you heard it? Did I tell you that story? The mouse in the house? I was, with the blood pressure in my head and I'm fainting. And this one's screaming, and the cat, whenever you have a cat and it makes this call, there's trouble. It means something up. It's not the regular meow. And here, Joan is screaming bloody murder. My blood pressure with all of this I'm going and concoct with the head I can't see, and everything is pounding. And she says, "Prissy's got a mouse." So, jeez. I get up and I stagger over, and there is the cat had put the mouse. The cat freaked out with the screaming. The heck with the mouse. And the cat took off. The mouse is on the floor. Joan says, "You got to get the mouse because the dogs are going to get it." So I bent over, and the blood pressure went, and I couldn't see, and I couldn't. So I stagger over, and I hit the corner of the room, and I just sunk into the corner. The mouse took off and hit that corner. I was in that corner. The mouse is in that corner. She's screaming. There's 2 big bags of dog food, but she goes berserk, knocks them over. The dog food is all over the floor. The dogs who are on a diet think, "This is great, hey!" And they're eating. They don't care for mouses. They're eating the food, and this was a bizarre situation. So the next day, Prissy catches another one. This one is on the floor. Joan says, "Take it out and dispose of it." Well, whatever. Get it away from it. So I pick up the mouse, I put it, and I'm taking it out in the backyard, and its little legs start going. So I come back to Joan. What are we going to do? The mouse's legs, its mother wants to know where is this mine. So a baby. So to make a long story short, this mouse winds up in its little fishbowl with sawdust on the thing or whatever it is, and she puts a sock underneath it and another sock on top of it for a little blanket, and all you see is the mouse's head sticking out with his little... Unfortunately, the mouse had to go because that's a traumatic experience. It died from the, the shock and everything, the nerve damage, so it went to Mouseketeer land, I guess, wherever. The point was, though, this is a beautiful point about that, okay? I can't, protect mice and rats and all of these crazy things and mosquitoes. But once this thing is injured, the fight is over. I mean, and what I felt so good about was the mouse died, but what I felt good, we treated it with the same respect as you would treat anything else that is of God. We tried to make it comfortable so that whatever, and it was, And so I felt really good about that. And it's a beautiful thing. What the heck has that got to do with nationalities? How did I get into this? But anyhow, that's universe. Well, that's and all of that. You're part of this, So don't let anybody label. Don't just drop all of your nationalities and all of that stuff because it's just a way for people to get mad at you. You know, they don't care what you're like. If you're a particular nationality, they don't like you. So I just drop it. Well, no, you tell them that because you were there. Come on.
Then the next night, I'm sitting in Billy's lounge chair reading the paper. Daisy's sleeping on the couch. Billy and Gigi are in bed. Brissy's doing her watch in the kitchen. You know, she sits at a strategic point where she's going to get them all over. This little mouse, this little teeny baby, comes out from under the couch that Daisy's on, comes halfway across the floor. So I rattled the paper because I don't want Prissy or Daisy to get it. Runs back in under the couch. Well, we did this for about a half an hour till finally I got Daisy to go to bed, you know. But it was so cute. It was just really, you know, real brave walking all over the house.
It really is. I mean, and the funny thing is the cat is on guard out in the kitchen now, staring under the sink, and there's the mouse coming in the other room, coming out onto the middle of the floor. But that's the end of that. So those are the types of things. Wherever that's got to do with his hairs are white like wool, but here they are. 114, his head and hairs white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire. Okay. Now that's the wisdom older than Christianity, older than the church, older than Judaism, older than Hinduism, older than Buddhism, older than everything is what's being talked about here. That takes the wisdom from beyond time. This is not an original thing with the book of Revelation. Go to page 730 in your Bible, and I'll show you where that comes from. Page 730 in your Bible, and you'll go into the book of Daniel, and you'll get to Daniel chapter 7. Page 730, Daniel chapter 7, and if you look at Daniel chapter 7 and verse 9, I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment white as snow, the hair of his head like the pure wool, his throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. All of that is the same thing that's being referred to in the book of Revelation, and it's talking about you. All of those symbols, they're just kind of grotesque metaphysical symbols for what goes on inside of your mind, what goes on inside of your head. This is actually the same as this which I'm about to write on the board. When the, I think it was in 1929, Robert Livingston, who was an explorer in Egypt, uncovered a temple which had scratched into, or carved into the walls of the temple these words, Nook, Poo, Nook. Whoops. Okay? And they had a heck of a time translating and figuring out what that meant. And finally, after many years, they were able to find out what it meant, and it means I am that I am. So you see it in the Bible and said, God said this to Moses. This was said thousands of years before anybody by the name of Moses was ever heard of. And as I said, inscribed in a temple in most ancient Egypt, thousands of years. Nook, Poo, Nook, I am that I am. That's the Ancient of Days. So it goes way beyond the Bible, way beyond Christianity, way beyond Egyptology, way beyond God knows when, to the earliest of time. Where you have, too, on page 1003, where it says that about his head and hairs were white. That's a symbol of that which is separation. The head and hairs is white. In other words, the thoughts which come from the head were the product of the Lamb, the absolute. They're white. There's none of the thoughts that come from you. This here is what is so meaningful, if you'll understand it, that your meditation has to produce these things. Because, each one of us go through, I've gone through this thing that I'm still battling with the blood pressure. Very hard to bring down because of the years of destruction that I've placed on myself. And each one of you can look at situations and you can trace back, what did I do? Or and then you try to move away from that, and you've got to somehow move away from the thoughts which continually plague you about your condition or about your life or your family, whatever it may be. It's very, very, very important then to begin to understand these things. That this head and hair is white like wool is saying that thoughts which come from your higher consciousness, which is your head and the hairs which come out of them, these things must be white, not meaning you get old. These things must be pure. These cannot be the thoughts which accuse you from the lower mind. So look at that again, 14. His head, his hairs were white like wool. That means that which comes out of your higher mind must be pure. And it can only be pure when you separate from thought from your lower mind, okay? So if you're to function in the heaven world, which is within you, you've got to be exposed to this thing. You've got to be exposed to what they call the Ancient of Days. And what that means is the very first person who ever walked on the planet Earth had the same exposure, the same thing. That's the only God that exists. There is no Protestant God, there's no Christian God, there's no Jewish God, there's no Buddhist God, there's no Muslim God, Hindu God. There's only one universal God that exists in the universe. It doesn't make any difference what you call him. I mean, you will get all upset because somebody will call a God Hare Krishna. And somebody else will call a God Zeus or whatever. That's irrelevant. It doesn't make any difference what God is called. There's only one universal God. And whether they call him by a different name, you may get mad at that person because you call him by a different name. But that's the only thing that's different. It's the same God. The same one God. All right? Then look at 2. It says his hair was white as snow. His eyes were as a flame of fire. That comes from the ancient mythology of what is known as the blazing eyes of Zeus, which is simply this. This is spirit fire. The flame of fire is the windows of the soul that they are used. They're purged by the Spirit. They can see Spirit. We're going to do one more, and then we'll wrap this up. Revelation 1:15. His feet like unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace, and his voice as the sound of many waters. Okay, this comes from the Kabbalah. And Friday night we taught on ancient magic and the Kabbalah. Okay. The Kabbalah is the origin of this statement, feet like unto fine brass. Because brass is a combination of copper and tin. That makes brass, a combination of copper and tin, which are the metals of Jupiter and Venus. And you can see it if you look at that chart there and how the combination. So that means that the Spirit moves quickly. It flows effortlessly through us and out of us into love. If you look at number 4 on your chart, it flows effortlessly out of Venus, which can be joy or can be depression or love, and into the new life, which is number 2, Jupiter, which is desire. Not desire on a lower aspect, but desire on a higher aspect, which is a desire for God, which is a desire for love. In writing this, John used an ancient archaic word, Chakalabian, which is C-H-A-L-K. Let me just see how to spell it. O-L-I-B-A-N-O-N. Okay. It's a form of oil. Do you ever see they have Bain de Soleil or Bain de Soleil and all of these words you'll find have their roots in this. But this means metal that forms in drops. It's like quicksilver, a fluid that finds its way, melted in a furnace. In other words, that which is the fluid, that which flows through you, that which stimulates you, that's what you feel as the stimulation in your meditation, part of that electrical energy that moves through your body. And then it says his voice is the sound of many waters, which is again from the Kabbalah. His lips murmur as the sound of many waters, which is the truth. Okay, the mystery of the inner spirit. So this is the 7 centers. It's the water, it's the truth, that when the Christ force is lifted to the 5th, that which is the throat area, Mercury, we speak truth of many things that are beyond time. And that's what people come up to me and say, listen, well, where did you learn this stuff? Where do I learn this stuff? Where do you learn this stuff? It's not only from studying, because you've studied this, you could have looked at this for years and years and years. And I would dare say that many of you have probably read some of this in Revelation before, and you put it down and say, what the heck is this? I can't get involved, because you had no way of connecting the two. You have no way of connecting the fact that this is talking about you. And it's not even that easy now. I'm explaining to you, but I'm trying to explain to you that all of this is written in mysticism and symbols, for now it opens up as a flower, as a lotus to you, that you can understand these things, and then you can realize that, as I said to you in the earlier part about Adam and about all these body parts, this is written by a divine intelligence trying to instruct you how really you can find life and overcome the problems and become one with the universe, instead of being enmeshed in the problems that we have here. And finally it says, and in his right hand he had 7 stars. 16. And out of his mouth went a sharp 2-edged sword, and his countenance was as the sun shines. His right hand, the 7 stars. Okay, which is then once again, that energy that flows from the 7 chakras opens up the right hemisphere of the brain. Okay. The temple door being on the right side. The kingdom of God is beyond the left mind. It's beyond the carnal mind. It is the right side. It is the dormant side which must come alive in life for you. The tithing must go from the left side. And you must begin to energize the right hemisphere of your brain. And here I read to you, in that book which we started off this message today, I read to you about the scientists who are stimulating and probing areas of the right hemisphere of the brain, and people are getting God experiences. So this is what Jesus, this is what the Bible instructed you to do. Stimulate it. Do it. What can happen? I mean, sometimes it's, gee, I want to have life. And I know it's the same thing with me. I would come in here, do a meditation with you, and have a great spiritual feeling, and go home and eat a half-gallon ice cream. And then maybe after that, have a plate of lo mein. Dump everything to destroy or go totally contrary to the body. So the spirit was up here, the body is down here, so how could I get centered? You can't. So you have to bring the spirit and the body into a relationship that you can get in the center, and then you can really find what this is being talked about. But you have to discipline yourself. You have to want to do it. And what it means is, if you don't want to do it, this trip around, and this is why there is reincarnation. Most of us don't want to do it. It's too much of a problem to stop and spend time with ourselves. And we say, well, I got to do this, I got to do the other thing. I'll find a doctor, I'll find something. And Buddha instructed me. He said, so I can get a doctor who can give me a pill, who can cause the blood pressure to go down, so that I can go back and do the same things that I was doing before, but not worrying about it anymore. So now I can eat all the sodium, and I can eat all the ice cream, and I can do all of these things, but I don't have to worry because now I've got a drug that's holding it down. And when Buddha spoke to me in the back of that room, he says, this is the problem with the philosophy of the West and why so many people get sick and the damage they do to their bodies is irreparable. They really don't want to get healed. They want to be able to continue to cause the same destruction to their body that they did before, but they want a drug so they can get away with it, see? Hey, I'm going to go eat the same stuff. I'll smoke the same things. I'll drink the same things. I'll eat the same things, but I'll take my pill. But that pill is obviously going to have side effects on something else at the same time when it's supposedly helping the thing that's disturbing you. So what Buddha says, no. He says, and I've taught, and he says, not only have I taught you, I've taught the people through you in that church where you sat and listened. I've taught you now Myoho Renge Kyo, which means, Renge, there's a cause and an effect. And he said to me, in your case, the effect is your high blood pressure, and the cause is you. It's not Chinese food. It's not sodium. It's not ice cream. It's you. Because you did not want to discipline yourself. You want to discipline yourself to the spirit. Oh, everybody likes to do that. But what about giving up all of this stuff and changing your lifestyle so that you take care of the body? You don't want to be bothered doing it, so it's easier to blame it on something else. So it was the sodium that did it. It's the Chinese food that did it. The doctor opened my eyes to that. He says it wasn't the Chinese food that did it. He says, I bear to say probably everybody else in your church, maybe except for a handful, could go in there and eat that same stuff that you can't. But you never paid any attention to what your body needs, and you never paid any attention to what you're doing to it. So now what Buddha said to me is, the effect is the high blood pressure, the cause is you. If you start putting good causes, you'll get good effects. It's up to you. If you continue to dump bad causes, you're going to get bad effects. And yeah, you may get a pill from a doctor that'll cover up the thing for a while so that you can go back doing the same old things you were doing before. But sooner or later, it's going to catch up to you. It's going to catch up to you. And this is what I've learned. And then as I stand up here teaching the book of Revelation, here's things talking about your body and what happens in your body if you practice these things. But what's the chances of it? Are you really interested in doing it? And it doesn't require you to stop living, to stop eating, to stop going here or stop going there. It doesn't require anything of you except some moments of your time during the week. But even that is difficult to appropriate. And we don't understand really why, except that, I just don't want to draw attention to myself. I don't want to draw attention to this, and so I just want to keep doing something. What do you want to do? I want to lay on the couch. What do you want to do? I want to watch a television program that I really don't care about seeing. Sit down and watch a television program, and if you're like me, you've got the thing in your hand. And you watch 47 television programs in the space of 30 seconds. They say them all. Every one of them. The thing keeps going like a spinning wheel. Boom, boom, boom. I don't really, but I'm there, so I'll just do it. Why are you turning the dial? Because. Because basically I'm not interested in any of it. So I can't take any of it more than 15 seconds and it's gone, and here comes another one. I don't care about any of it. See? I turn the sound off too, because I really don't like it. So I don't want to look at the picture more than 10 seconds, and I don't want to listen to the sound at all, so I turn the sound off. And then I'll go out of the room, and Joan will turn the sound up, because she likes VH1 with the rock music, so she's listening to the music, and then I'll come back in, I'll look, I'll turn the sound down, I'll get up and leave. I say, why do you turn the sound down? I don't know. It's just something to do, see? And so we're not doing the right things, and we're not making the right causes. So I would hope that together as we begin to learn these things, and you begin to learn as we've gotten instruction today, that the whole Bible is written about your body. And it's up to you. And you can say, geez, I feel this way, I feel lousy. Buddha will say, certainly you do. You caused it. You have done something to yourself. You have misappropriated your body. You have done something to your body which has caused it to feel this way. And then you'll come up and say, geez, this is terrible. Why do I feel this way? Buddha says you feel this way because of something you did. Now, there are situations. I mean, there's a situation recently. Let me tell you something. I have high blood pressure, okay? Fine. You say, well, why? Somebody in my family tree maybe 500 years ago screwed up. Somebody did something and implanted a genetic defect that's passed all the way down, because it goes down to my mother, it goes down to my family. Everybody's got it. So who is the culprit years ago? So not only what I put into my body messes me up, but if you're going to plan, if you're having children, you can mess people up all the way. You can mess people 500 years from now because of a mistake or something that you choose to do now. It's passed down from generation to generation to generation to generation to generation. There's nothing you can do about that. And that's the karmic problem. Everything's got to be worked out. It doesn't make, and that's one of the things that Buddha teaches, it doesn't make any difference. If you're making the cause now, the effect may not be seen for 200 years. And the effect may not even be seen by you, but it may be seen by an offspring of yours. John Bradshaw talked about the fact that a mother can scream at a child and cause that child to have a change in the electrical magnetic fields of its brain and be all screwed up for the rest of its life. One scream can do that. Irreparable damage. And then what's put in place? A genetic defect in the brain of that child develops because of that one scream. What's going to be passed down from that child's children 100 or 200 years from now? So, it's easy to so why was this child born like that? And right away you'll say, God did it. Because who else could have done it? You want to close that door over? Who else could have done it? Just ask the people out there, Mark, to hold it for a bit. Say, who else? Who's responsible for these things? I found out that I'm responsible. There are situations that you get into that certainly is not a responsibility of anybody. If for some reason you go in someplace, there's this Arthur Ashe that's on television. He's the tennis player. All of a sudden he's got AIDS. He didn't do anything. It wasn't his cause that made the effect of AIDS, but somebody caused it. It wasn't God. It wasn't nature. It wasn't the blood. It was somebody picked it up from somebody else. Somebody had started this chain, and it's going like wildfire, and a person goes in to get a blood transfusion or for whatever reason, innocently, and they come out and they got AIDS. Okay. But there is responsibility of the human species, and the human species doesn't want to take responsibility for it. People today will say, oh, well, this started back in Africa somewhere. So blame them. Okay. But it's important for each person to look and say that when you, at the very least, you start turning yourself to the teachings of these masters and the teachings of these ancients and realize that when the cause is made, the effect is going to happen. And it may not happen now, it may not happen in this lifetime, but it will happen. And it may not even happen to you, but it'll happen to somebody. And that's why it is so very, very important that you get into meditation, because you can't avoid it. You can't avoid the effects. You can't avoid Renge. Meditation is the only thing that can break that karmic cycle. There is nothing else in the world that can do it. So I would hope that each one of us would realize, hey, I have done something. Now let me raise myself above, and as Buddha said, okay, don't go on a guilt trip. Just start putting good causes in. And let's get good effects, and let's overwhelm and wipe that past out. I know what I've got to do. The diet's got to change. I got to take the medicine until I can get this thing under control. What is my goal? The hope of my life now is that someday I won't have to take it. But I know, I can't look back and say, You know, I know if I had been aware, and I should have been aware that it was in my family, that I should have been aware that I have to be careful, but I didn't give a darn. I just didn't pay any attention to it. So now you have to pay attention. Like Jesus said, if you didn't know, then you wouldn't be guilty. But now you know. So now you know, you got to be alert, you got to be aware, and you've got to make changes. And that's what I've got to do. Lose the weight, do the exercise, change the diet, and do all of the things that's necessary for me to put myself where I should have been. Because if I had been there and had been paying attention to it before, I wouldn't have this. It's all responsibility. And even coming here on a Tuesday night, and that's what I can't understand for the life of me, and yet we see so many good things happening to people, and yet you'll see so many empty chairs because it's an inconvenience to go out on a Tuesday night. It's too cold. It's too hot. It's raining. It's snowing. It's cloudy. Whatever it is, there's a million excuses. What will the couch do without me tonight? You know? And yet here's the most powerful, most wonderful thing that's handed to you, that's given to you. Now, I'm sure some of you work. I understand that. But there's many that don't, but it's just too much of an inconvenience. And that's something that you should overcome because it's important to you, for your life and for your family, that you plug into this. This new age is upon you, and it's not fooling. It's a beautiful, powerful thing. And don't anybody give up no matter what your illness is, no matter what your problem is, because it's not just you that's in the battle anymore. The universe, Uranus has come back, has taken Gaia. The whole universe is exploding in new life and light for you. So it's a good time. Thank you for being with us.